Welcome to a special presentation brought to you by the Undroppables. I'm your host, Scott Belanger, aka Jax Falcone, and we are going to be doing a rookie mock draft for the 2024 class. Welcome to the 2024 mock draft. Let me introduce the guys I've got rolling with me. Taking the 101 today will be Mr. Dan Wisner. Mr. Wiz, congratulations for the 101. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. Good to be here. Looking forward to talking through some of the 24 class with you here, Jackson Joe.
Absolutely. And of course, we've got Joe Kuvatakis making his debut here on the program today. Joe, of course, we put him at the 103. I'll be taking the 102. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I can't wait. First mock of the season.
Absolutely. This is like red meat for all dynasty players. All you have to do is do a mock draft, and everybody wants to watch it. I want to watch it. I want to watch what you guys do too. I'm so excited. So without further ado, Mr. Wiz, let's get the board up there. Way better to see the board than it is to see our beautiful faces. But kicking off on the 1.01, is there a thought for you? And just kind of let us know where you're at with the 1.01. We're going to move kind of fast, but we do want to hear your thoughts on every pick that we make. So let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jax, I really don't think it's a conversation too much for me here. Some of this it kind of goes back to some of the things that you, Chalk, and I talked about on a previous pod, is that there's going to be a ton of insulation value with Caleb, right? Whether there's question marks, whether it's prospect fatigue right now or not. I think, most of us can kind of see that elite ceiling with him. And given that insulation that comes along with it, where if he gets off to a slow start, it's not something I really have to worry about from a value perspective, really dwindling here too much in the next couple of years. So I'll go ahead and take Caleb Williams at the 101.
Yeah, seems smart to me. I'm not so sure I can disagree with anything you said. I've got some concerns about all the quarterbacks. I think, one of the interesting things about every single rookie draft is the uncertainty of the quarterbacks. And of course, I'm up at the 102 after a little bit of technical difficulties from Mr. Wiz, but we kind of clipped all that out. Don't you worry. But here at the 102, I think this is actually one of those spots where I think everybody in a Superflex draft is going to have a decision to make. And I think there's a lot of different decisions that you can make. Whether you go a quarterback, this is a slight tight end premium, by the way, 1.5 tight end premium. So not a huge premium. Brock Bowers certainly becomes someone that you're going to think about at some point. The two quarterbacks. I'm of the opinion that I want to be almost as safe as possible here while also capturing as much upside as I possibly can. And I think that probably is found in a wide receiver position. And Mr. Wiz, you'll know that you and I have a model that clearly identified Justin Jefferson as the number one wide receiver over the last 6 years. That same model had Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors tied at the exact same prospect score. I really like Malik Neighbors, so I'm going to do something a little bit spicy, and I'm going to go ahead and take Malik Neighbors at the 1.02. I feel like he's safe and has a ton of upside. It's hard to turn away from a quarterback, but hey, stay on brand.
I love that pick, and I'm also heartbroken because I wanted the opportunity to take him from you, but can't argue with it, and I'm not going to argue with your model either. This is pretty chalky. I'll go Marvin Harrison Jr., hoping he goes to Arizona and him and Kyler make some sweet, sweet music together.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you're talking about two great prospects, Jax. I think you mentioned, like, as we were kind of going through some of that stuff with our model, seeing them grade out together, I think is a fantastic sign. And Joe, I think to your point, if he lands with Kyler there, that should be a really nice fantasy situation for him, kind of right off the bat. So I can see that.
Yeah, the dichotomy sort of between what I've heard Chalk call the queen chess piece, that is Malik Neighbors, is what makes him so tantalizing, whereas Harrison's going to be outside at the X primarily, But I've read and heard some great analysis about just when you've got an X like that, you don't need to move them around, and it still changes the way the entire offense works, and you can still run it through them. So I don't know. I think like we're splitting hairs here.
I agree.
I like
They're
it.
both amazing.
They are. All right, I'm back up at the 104. This is a bit of a decision here for me. Part of me, I think when I think about this from a real football perspective, maybe I probably lean something like Drake May. But for the sense of the upside here, I'm going to take Jaden Daniels. That rushing floor that he's going to give you is something that's enticing. Obviously, this is quite landing spot dependent, but all accounts are he's going to get the draft capital. And look, if he lands in a Cliff Kingsbury offense, say he goes to Washington at 2. Cliff's got that history with the running quarterbacks and getting quite a bit out of them. Not necessarily putting together the best offenses, but from a fantasy-friendly perspective, Jaden is somebody that I'd feel comfortable taking there. So I will go ahead and take Jaden Daniels at the 104.
I'm always super, nervous about all the quarterbacks. I'm nervous about Jaden Daniels. There's also, I think, there's been some word that the Jaden Daniels top 3 NFL pick is a bit of a smokescreen. And there was even some word that I think it was it Schefter came out and reported someone had J.J. McCarthy over Drake May. I can't remember who it was. I'm spacing, but it's like unbelievable. This J.J. McCarthy is starting to get steam. He could go top 3. I mean, what if it does go Caleb, Drake May, then J.J. or something like that? I mean, I just think anything is possible. It makes these quarterbacks a little bit more risky than some of these position players. But I'm going to have a hard time not pushing the button for Drake May in a super flex situation here. He does have rushing upside as well. Drake May was, I think it was like 800 yards rushing. So I'm going to take Drake May at the 105 and feel pretty good about it.
No arguments with that pick. Honestly, in Superflex, Daniels scares me a little bit more than May and McCarthy do, just because in Superflex Dynasty, what I'm most concerned about is the quarterback value preservation, right? And with a guy like Daniels, who's a little on the lighter side, who's a little bit more reckless, more chances to get hurt. So I tend to aim for upside at the other positions, but at quarterback, I just want to make sure I protect that investment, because if you miss at quarterback early, it can set you back a real long time. So I'm thrilled because I'm taking who I think is maybe the second safest quarterback on the board right here. Also a guy who I was reading something the other day. He had the best conversion rate on third downs under pressure. That's something that has gone unnoticed because, Michigan didn't throw the ball that much, but I love J.J. McCarthy. My wife went to Michigan, so I watched a lot of Michigan football over the last couple of years. I was hoping J.J. was going to fall to the Raiders some point late in the first round or possibly even the second, but it sounds like he's gotten steamed up, and I am on board. Let's go, J.J.
Yeah, he also Milton threw 62 miles an hour at the
I saw
at
that.
the combine. He threw 61.
Yeah.
Sam Hartman with his awesome hair was like at 52. God bless him.
But
I know.
God damn, he's good looking.
I mean, that hair, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. I mean, so he does have a strong arm. I mean, I think you could have made a lot worse picks. I think it's a pretty smart pick. It's a sharp pick, especially if he's going to be a top 10 quarterback. He's gonna land nicely in the top 10 someplace. I think Minnesota's the favorite right now, but who knows? Maybe the Patriots will get silly and draft him at 3. It's possible.
I'm excited. I don't mind if he sits a year. I don't mind if he gets thrown into the fire right away. I trust him. I think he's going to figure it out.
Wiz, who you got?
There's a lot to like with that pick there. So, Joe, I get it. It's a nice upside pick. I mean, if this was not tight end premium, this isn't a doomsday pick for me pretty much all day long. But given that premium, given kind of what we've seen from Brock as being that generational prospect, I'm really not thinking too much here in a tight end premium. So I will go ahead and take Brock Bowers at the 107.
Yeah, I thought that's a great pick. I actually thought I think he was in play. Jeez, there's going to be super tight end premium leagues where he goes 1.01. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. If you're in 2x, tight end premium leagues, it's going to happen. So, he's an interesting prospect. He's going to be probably the best tight end prospect we've ever scouted, especially in the model, right, Wiz? I mean, when we put the numbers to it, I think he's going to be the greatest tight end prospect of all time. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, like from some of the things that go into it, right? So it's more than just yards per route run, but when you look at some of the missed tackles for stuff with him,
Yep.
look, we don't have his numbers from what he's going to run at his pro day yet, but there's rumors that he ran like a 4.5 in high school, right? So you're going to have a nice speed score at tight end there with an incredible college production profile. So yeah, Jax, I mean, that's a guy that's going to grade out very high.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie. I was terrified of the guy when I saw that picture of him Super Bowl week next to Gronk, and he looked diminutive next to Gronk. And so, I've written about tight ends who are under 6'3", and so I was ready to write him off. I also thought he was going to come in around 230, but when he showed up to the combine, weighed in at 243, measured over 6'3", all concerns went away, and it's all systems go on.
I don't think we're supposed to swear on here, but I don't think he pooped in like 2 or 3 weeks. I think he was holding it all in there. But so anyway, he took the longest one ever after that weigh-in.
Oh
but,
yeah.
At the end of the day, he's so good. We talked about it, Wiz, as a wide receiver. If he were a slot wide receiver, he would still be a top 5 wide receiver in this class. And that really never happens at the tight end position. So he's a unicorn in that way.
Yeah, he is.
I'm gonna take Rome Odunze, or as Matt Kelly called him, Romeo Duze. Either one of those guys, I'm taking them both. Put them on my team. Rome Odunze. He just passes all the sort of checkpoints. I don't think he has anything that stands out as specifically elite, but he is good to very good at almost everything. I think he answered a lot of questions at the combine by being athletic, and then he answered the competitive nature question by going out there and just competing his ass off, doing every single drill, and actually succeeding at every one of them. He scored highly everywhere across the board. I am now a Rome Odunze fan, and a little bit of that outside X scares me from time to time, but I think he's got enough all-around game to anchor him to targets in the NFL, and he's going to have the draft capital as well. So sign me up.
Yeah. I love that. I couldn't agree more. I was comparing Rome Odunze to Jamar Chase, right? Where Jamar Chase showed up to the combine, he was already consensus number 1. Rome's not even consensus number 1, but Jamar ran. He did every single drill, and he attacked it all. And I love any player that's willing to just go out there and do it anyway, even though their draft capital is probably already safe.
Well, you're here at 1.09, Mr. Kuvitakis, which I love saying his last name. But Joe, you're at 1.09. This is sort of the tier break, right? Right after the top 8, we get these 4 quarterbacks, we get the 3 stud wide receivers, we get the tight end, and then it's like, honestly, there's so many different publications that will give you so many different players that they want to take right here. I'm actually curious to see who Joe takes here, because I do know who Wiz is taking if you don't take him. So.
Well, I think that the answer is the same. A week ago, this was a much tougher question for me. I think the question of 109 has been answered, and I think 110 is now that turning point where it's just the field opens up quite a bit. But if a guy weighs in at 209 and runs a 4.33 and scored 17 touchdowns last year next to another dominant ball hawk in the same offense, my concerns are alleviated. It's Brian Thomas Jr. all day long here. Thank you, BTJ, for answering all our questions last week. Real easy pick for me.
Well, I would also like to thank Brian Thomas Jr. because that just made Troy Franklin fall to me at the 110. Joe, everything that you laid out with Brian Thomas Jr. is absolutely valid. I agree with it. I mean, seeing that upside, what he did, what he put together this year across from Neighbors was crazy. For me, at least, when we've gone through some of the model stuff, some of the early production, I can't ignore it. I don't want to place every emphasis on it. So I definitely see there is that kind of DK path for him. So we'll be interesting to see how that plays out, because I guess probability would say it's going to be tough for him to do that. But look, seeing him at the combine, seeing what he's able to do from a missed tackles force perspective, top 7 in the class from a missed tackles force at his size is something to like a lot. So I get the pick. Personally, here at the 110, I will go Troy Franklin. A lot of that is the early production for me. So, this is a guy that's graded out for as number three for us, I think, almost right behind Roma Dunze from a model perspective, right? So it's a guy that we like. I like that early production, nice dominator rating sophomore, junior year. So and really kind of help put Bo Nix into some draftable conversations here. So Jack's cut in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you'll also, I mean, look, Troy Franklin is the wide receiver 3 according to our model. That doesn't mean he's our wide receiver 3. I'm going to have Roma Dunze over him, but if we're just listening to the way that the historical data tends to stack these players up, year over year, we should be taking Troy Franklin at the wide receiver 3 spot. I get it. He's not going to be drafted as the wide receiver 4 in the NFL draft. I think he's going to probably go in the second round. He had an ugly gauntlet. He didn't run all that fast, and there's just some things I think that the NFL is going to value a little bit more than maybe they should, But that being said, I think he's going to be a second-round pick. Look, who knows? We don't know. I mean, it takes one team to fall in love with him. Late first, early second, I think, is where he goes. So that's going to be quite a bit different than Roma Dunze in terms of draft capital. Brian Thomas is, as you point out, an elite specimen. This pick becomes harder and harder, this 111. I think by the time your rookie draft actually comes along, if we're post-draft, I think this is likely where RB1 gets drafted. We don't know who RB1 is. So, because we don't know landing spot and draft capital, and that makes this harder. If you tell me that Blake Corum is the first running back drafted in the second round by the Chargers, then give me Blake Corum right here, baby.
Yeah.
This is an easy pick. But I don't know where he's going to go, and I don't know if he's going to get a soft landing spot. So for that reason, I'm going to take the guy who's going to get targeted all over the field. It's kind of a safe pick. It's Ladd McConkey. He's going to be maybe a first-round pick. He's got great yards per route run at the college level. He's sort of hidden in plain sight because his counting stats are not that awesome. I remember early in the process, I sort of joked about him being a real prospect in this class, but I think he is, and I think he deserves to be a late first, early second round pick for sure in the upcoming rookie drafts.
Can't argue with that logic. I completely agree in terms of the running back conversation. I was thinking about that dilemma myself at this point pre-draft, what to do. And I think you're right in terms of Corum being the safest. But at this point in the draft, I think I'm going to have to take the guy that stole the show at the Combine. Did not test as the most athletic, but he had the elite freshman year breakout rating. He gets open. He ran a variety of routes. He went from being a deep threat to a guy that they threw the ball to behind the line of scrimmage. It's Texas wide receiver Xavier Worthy and his 4.21 40. History tells us to fade the fastest guy at the Combine year in and year out, but I think we have an outlier here, and I'm doing some studies on him right now, and he looks good, guys. He looks real good.
Yeah, I had thought that he was going to look even better, Wiz, in our analytical model. I really like him. He's got early production at a big school, right at Texas. I think he was almost 700, 800 yards as a true freshman. He outperformed another wide receiver who's getting some steam as well, and A.D. Mitchell. I think he's a really good player, and I agree with you. He's not John Ross. But he's also probably not Jalen Waddle either. You know what I mean? So I don't know exactly where he is, but he's somewhere in there. And but he's a hell of a nice pick. Whether it would have been me at 111 or at 112. So yeah, if it wasn't Ladd McConkey, it was certainly Xavier Worthy for me as well. So I think it's a great pick. A real quick recap, Mr. Wiz. I'll just hit it up real quick. At the 1.01, we had Caleb Williams. 1.02, Malik Neighbors. 1.03 was Marvin Harrison Jr. Then it went Jaden Daniels, Drake May at the 5, J.J. McCarthy at pick 6, Brock Bowers at a 1.5 tight end premium at 1.07. You could argue for him at any point earlier than that as well. And then it was Rome Odunze, excuse me, then Brian Thomas, then Troy Franklin, Lad McConkey, and Xavier Worthy to close it out. Mr. Wiz, you're on the clock with the 2.01. Go right ahead.
Can we just take a second too and look at the board? And that's 7 wide receivers in the first round. Like, I mean, that's to close it out with 5 in a row there really speaks to some of the depth in this running back class. And I think kind of where everybody's at on it. Jax, I think you brought up a really, really good point where like it speaks to the tier that tier break that we're seeing where we're all waiting on landing spots so much to draft these guys. That's why we're all so hesitant. So for me, look, because we don't know landing spots right now, you know, I'm more inclined to bet on talent. I think if you probably pulled Twitter and said, you know, if you could get Adonai Mitchell at the 201, I think most people are probably taking the upside shot there. And I look, I'm not going to fault them for that, but it's just, he's not a guy that I like. I understand the allure of him. But a guy that I'm going to take, Jax, he's been our RB1 the whole time. You know, we'll see where he lands. I know it's early. Honestly, if this was a real draft, I'd probably look to kind of trade out here and see what I could get later. But I will go ahead and take Mr. Jonathan Brooks.
Jeez, I thought I could get away with it, but I can't. I can't get away with it. This Wiz, I mean, I don't know why we even have him around. This is ridiculous. This is bullshit.
I knew he wasn't getting back to me, so yeah.
Taking my guy right in front of me. My goodness.
I think Wiz brings up a really good point in terms of the running backs, and I kind of feel like at this stage in particular, I don't know how many people are doing startups right now. I know a few of us psychos are, but it almost seems to me like you can just wait because there's this tier of 5 in my book, and just see, once they start going, I don't think you want to be the first guy taking a running back right now, but you want to be in on that tier, so you got to time it that way. But I got no qualms with that pick.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I agree with that a lot, actually. You know, at this particular time, it's going to change when the rookie draft actually happens, if it's after the NFL draft, because again, landing spot and all the information about that is going to be out, and you'll have a cleaner look at it for sure. All right, I'll do it too then. You want to mess around? I'm taking Blake Corum. I do think he's the most NFL ready. I don't think he's going to miss draft capital. I just can't imagine. The NFL heads are going to love this guy. He does everything right. And I said it on the pod this week. I said, if there's one player that could land softly and command 250 carries in year 1, it's Blake Corum. I just think he could be leaned on. At the very least, he's going to be part of a committee back, you know, somewhere in that day 2. So, look, I may come to regret this pick, but give me Blake Corum and just a double into the gap as opposed to a home run.
100%. And I kind of feel like Blake Corum is like one of those picks where it depends where your team is, right? If you're competing right now, you want Blake Corum out of this group of running backs. If you're rebuilding,
right?
if you're rebuilding, you want to take one of the younger guys because Blake's already 23 and a half, right? But no question, he's the most pro ready. He fits in any scheme, any system. He can block. He's good between the tackles. He loves running through that A gap. I mean, coaches are going to love him regardless of whether he's in LA or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I do think
just so happens you're up too. But go ahead.
I do, real quick. I do think Corum is an interesting case from a dynasty perspective, right? Because he is an older guy, right? So, you know, kind of seeing this going around on Twitter a little bit. Some of the guys talking about his age and just how his career archetype works, and I think it's a valid conversation, right? And that's where you need to be careful because, you know, we talk about selling running backs as soon as they get a little bit older, right? You know, this is a guy that has a ton of wear and tear on his tires, so it's something that, look, I'd take him if you're competing, but I would also be ready to flip like kind of soon into his career. So just wanted to kind of add that.
Yep,
agreed. Well, this one's for the brand, guys. I'm going to stick with Michigan players, and I got to take my guy. Nice. He ran a 4.39. I predicted he was going to run a 4.38, but he ran a 4.39. Roman Wilson, when I watch this guy play, I see like the love child of Tyler Lockett and Steve Smith. I don't think he's Steve Smith after the catch, but the way he
Yeah.
goes up for the ball absolutely fearlessly,
He's a dog.
I fell in love with this guy. And then, kind of before the reception and then after the catch, he looks like Tyler Lockett to me. So he just feels like a can't miss prospect. He blew up the Senior Bowl. He left after day 2. And he made the play of the Senior Bowl. So I just, it's, rocket emoji for Roman Wilson here.
Oh, I like the pick. I mean, look, I like him because he's your guy, right? Like, I like that you're going after your guy. It's an interesting pick for me. But I like, you're trusting your process, and it's going to be fun to kind of watch that play out. Jax, you got thoughts?
No, I was just saying, this is such a tough spot in the draft at this particular point, because there's so many guys that I like, not love. And, I don't know which one I want to say. I could name you 5 guys I'm thinking about taking right now, and I wouldn't be like, I must have one of these guys. But when the NFL draft finally happens, that tune could change, Tell me Trey Benson gets drafted in the 2nd round of the Cowboys, and I couldn't fucking push the button fast enough right now for him. But, at the end of the day, we don't know these running back landing spots, so I'm a little hesitant. But, no, Roman Wilson's fine there. Ahead of A.D. Mitchell, you're going to have them coming after you with pitchforks.
The hive, yeah.
Yep. Go ahead, Wiz. Tell us what's next. I mean, at some point, maybe it's you, maybe it's me.
I mean, so I'm having the internal conversation kind of that you just had, Jax, right? Is like, all right, what's the upside with some of these running backs? Because I do feel like, this is a really, really good free agent class from a running back perspective. Jax,
true.
you and Coop talked about that a lot on your pod. Where look, if you stack up where those guys are going to go, a lot of those guys are not signing to be a backup. They're going to sign wherever they go to get like the large volume of the work. And then it's like, all right, well, how many impact jobs are still open for rookies then? Not to mention, we're probably not going to see the draft capital with a lot of these guys. And then you've got a loaded 25 running back class coming in next year. I worry that these guys are getting propped up just because there's not a lot to prop up from a running back perspective this year. And given the nature of the landscape position in Dynasty right now, I worry about value, right? So the way I'm thinking about this is, what pick can I take right now to insulate the most value? And I think if I look at the masses, while I may not agree with it, to insulate the most value, I will go ahead and take Adonai Mitchell.
You said it really, really well, and that's actually the diatribe I wanted to go on my last pick and take A.D. Mitchell. So you said it better than me, so you deserve to make the pick. That's exactly right. It's preserving that value. So even if you don't believe in a player, you still can believe in his ADP and believe in what other people think about him. And if you're wrong and he's good, then you just doubled your value. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. So if you don't think he's that good, but he ends up being good, you still get to reap the rewards of that.
Sure.
Yeah, I really like the pick. We've talked about it that we have some wide receivers, whether it be in that same sort of group. Roman Wilson, one of them, but even Javon Baker and some others that we think could be better than him. Not exactly sure. I'm going to go ahead and take Javon Baker right here because I can't allow you guys to get him over me. So I'm just taking Javon Baker and calling it a day. He is that guy for me at this particular point. I do have Adonai Mitchell and Javon Baker pretty close. I think Javon Baker is just probably likely a better player, but I think Adonai Mitchell is going to have much more value. So you said it right, but give me Javon Baker.
Kudos to Wiz for showing some discipline here. Me and Jax going off the board and just taking our guys. And, my next pick was going to be Javon for the very same reason. I couldn't agree with you more. That guy does just everything he does. I like.
Yeah.
I like his ADOT, and his yards per route run with that ADOT. It's an impressive combination.
Yep.
Now you put me in a tough spot here. I'm going to try and be a little bit more like Wiz and get us back on track with what, the folks' rookie drafts are actually going to look like. I do think that there's a pretty good chance this guy gets first-round draft capital, and if he does, he's going to go a lot earlier than we're drafting him in this mock right here. But I think there's a pretty good chance that Bo Nix ends up on the Broncos. I think he's the kind of guy that they would like. And so I'm just going to go ahead and take Bo Nix because we're in a super flex draft. And just take my medicine here. I don't have really a whole lot more to say. Peyton's going to like him. He's a timing guy. I don't like it.
Nix
Makes the pick
over,
and immediately says,
hey,
I don't like
Nix
it.
over P-Nix. Interesting.
Mm.
I mean, I would go
It
P-Nix.
is.
Look, my thought process is this: if he gets taken in the first round, he's going before my pick right now. And so, in the same vein that Wiz was discussing with value preservation, you got to just take the quarterback there.
It's funny because I've looked back at some of my rosters that have like Hendon Hooker on them, and I'm like, Jesus, you know what I mean? It's like, so sometimes we think that these quarterbacks, it's hard to know which ones are gonna, sort of carry that, asymmetrical year 2, year 3 upside, and the ones that just seem to be forgotten. I don't know how to figure that out actually, but I do agree that it's worth the upside value pick if he does end up landing a starting job. So you can't be too wrong with that pick at all.
No, and Joe, I think he does kind of feel like a Peyton guy, right? Like he's seems
100%.
older, more experienced, like timing. Like I would not be surprised to see him land there. And then you're right? Like if you're getting him at the 2.5 here or the 2.6 here, you're getting some really nice value there. So I understand that.
Yeah, and to be clear, I actually have Penix on my personal board ahead of Bo Nix, but I just think Bo Nix is going to get drafted ahead of him, that's going to dictate
fair.
draft capital in our rookie drafts as well.
Yep. Yeah, that's smart.
It's a good point.
What do you got with?
So, honestly, before the combine, Jax, you probably know who I would have gone here. And
yes,
Sanders is probably the guy that I would have gone. I just thought he was going to run a lot better. I thought he was going to put up some numbers that would have put him in some nice speed score company, which was kind of a bummer to see that. So I'm going to let him slide for now. And then the conversation just kind of goes back to look at this point. This is a massive tier for me that kind of it's right here, and it doesn't really stop until you kind of go into the third. So I think there's a case to be made for a number of guys here. I'm going to go with, it's between two running backs for me, but I'm actually going to go with Marshawn Lloyd. I loved what he did at the combine. I think he's the type of guy that at 220 pounds to run the way he does, he was, number 2 in missed tackles forced per reception in this class for running backs, which, one of my rules is if I'm going to take you, you've got to be able to catch the ball and make some guys miss. And, he shares that trait with Jonathan Brooks from a missed tackles forced perspective for reception. So I'll go ahead and take Marshawn Lloyd here, Jax.
It's pretty interesting because I'm not sure who the other guy is. Will you tell me if I'm right when I pick my guy? Because I'm going to take one of the other 2 running backs that's in a big tier for me, and I'm not sure if it's Trey Benson or Jalen Wright. But I'm going to go ahead and take Jalen Wright and hope it's your guy. Was that the one, or was it Trey Benson?
If you asked me a week ago, it was Trey Benson. If you asked me today, it's Jalen Wright. So it was Jalen Wright.
They're close for me for sure.
They are.
I go back and forth with these guys, so I think having some different opinions. I like Jalen Wright's explosiveness. I got scared off. Look, Thor Nystrom, Felix Sharp, Ray GQ, and John Lobb all were like, I'm not sure about this Trey Benson guy. I don't know where all this negativity comes from about Trey Benson. I guess it's just interesting that these college football guys, these college football analysts and fans were a little bit hesitant about Trey Benson. Then he goes out and he really he did everything we want to see at the combine, but so did all these other guys, Marshawn Lloyd included. So I'll take Jalen Wright.
I got no qualms, and I'm actually a little bit jealous about both of your last 2 picks. These top 5 running backs are kind of all interchangeable to me, and for different reasons. We talked about the sort of safety value proposition of Quorum in the year 1 production and how confident we are in that. Lloyd with the 111 speed score and 120 burst score. You've got Wright with the 114 speed score and 131 burst score.
Yeah, he's very
some questions about his vision, but I heard Matty Kiwoom say he's a one-trick pony, but that trick is really, good.
Yeah.
So I like guys that can break away runs, and for that reason, I'm gonna stick on the running back train. I told you guys I want to be the last guy to get. I want to be at the end of the tier, and we are now 4 running backs in. So I want to make sure I don't want to miss out on the last guy. So I'm going to go ahead and take Trey Benson,
Yep.
who had combine measurables similar to our New York. Yeah, huh? Kenneth
Brees
Walker
Hall, yeah.
is
Ken
one
Walker,
of them.
Brees Hall,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah, exactly, and Brees Hall. And to your point, Jax, he had a catastrophic knee injury in college as well. And so that can explain for some of his lighter workload, the transfer, everything that unfolded. But then when you get him at the combine, you see the athleticism. He may still be recovering. And I think once he gets on an NFL field, we'll see, the full bloom of what Benson can be. Fingers crossed.
All right, 5 running backs off the board
Let's
here.
go,
Yeah.
baby.
All right. So I think, look, this kind of goes back to the conversation that we had a little bit earlier, right? Is I think if you pulled Twitter right now, this is probably a relatively easy decision.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. There's a guy right now that everybody's wondering why you haven't taken him.
Exactly. Yeah. And look, I think it's important to kind of just touch on this is I understand people like Keon Coleman, like he makes plays on tape that literally do make you say, wow. Right. And I think when you look at some of the things, I think his 40 time was overblown because I think when you watch him run through the gauntlet and hit some of that highest miles per hour stuff, I think he kind of does quell some of that. To me, it's just a production thing, right? It's like he's not over some certain metrics that we kind of like. So for that reason, I'm going to kind of stick to my process here, right? So I think then it goes to, Jatavian Sanders, Braylon Allen. There is one wide receiver kind of in the mix for me here. And if I was sticking true to the process, I would probably go him. But given that it's tight end premium, we're still kind of almost at the end of the second round here. I feel all right with at least taking the shot. I will take Jatavian Sanders here at the 210.
He almost talked
What a
himself
fake
into
out.
it. He almost talked himself into it, but he actually talked. He said, if I stick to my process, I'd be taking a guy, and that guy is who I'm going to be taking.
Mm-hmm.
Malik Washington is coming on the board for me. When he just bypassed him, he got afraid. He lost his will and didn't take Malik Washington when he was available to him and let Jax come in and swoop him in. So give me Malik Washington dunking all over the Wiz.
That hurts a bit.
I love that
knew
pick.
It was Malik Washington. You almost talked yourself into it. You did this whole thing. You did a great job. You laid it out. Keon Coleman's probably the right pick value-wise. Wiz, I'll let you respond to this just absolute, postering that I just did.
Yeah, so look, it was tough. It was tough to go away from the process. But again, if this was not tight end premium, Jax, like it's between him and one other wide receiver that's really close. Yeah. I like the pick there. And look, I don't know if you saw some of the stuff that Danny Kelly was tweeting out today about Malik Washington. He kind of, had some nice little things to say about him there too. So seeing him kind of gain some steam with some of the other guys in the fantasy community recently has been fun to see because he's been a guy that we've kind of liked for a bit.
Well, we'll have Danny Kelly on the show next week. So
fantastic.
There you go. So I'll ask him about that.
All right, well, we're going to give Wiz another chance at Keon Coleman here because Keon Coleman confuses me. When I see a guy run a 4.61 and then I see him run an incredible gauntlet, to be fair, there's an argument to be made about game speed versus testing speed and what have you. He's a lot of things that I like. And a few question marks, and the uncertainty is what makes me push him down the board at this point. Draft capital can change the conversation, but a guy I'm not uncertain about. I'm going to go back to the Senior Bowl. I'm going to go back to a guy that left after day 2. I'm going to go back to a guy who was the best route runner by all accounts at the Senior Bowl. And I'm going to take Ricky Pearsall, who also happened to make one of the greatest catches I've ever seen in my life last season. I can't not be excited about him. If he lands well, depending on what team he ends up on, boy, I mean, he could see his stock rise huge after the draft.
He's an interesting guy. He really is. I mean, you're right. I think he's up there with like Odell with like one of the best catches I've ever seen. Look, from a straight up analytical standpoint, there's a lot of people asking like, why do we like this guy? But when you listen to some really smart people, like, you know, Brett Whitefield over at Fantasy Points, he's really high on him. I think I saw him in DJ's mock yesterday. I think he's up as high as I want to say he's like in the 40s now, right? Or even low 50s.
And they're scheming him the ball. He's getting carries too. In addition to, you know, running a 4.41, and just everything about him impresses me. The route running, the speed. I was worried about the combine. I was worried about his speed, and he answered every question. Tape speaks for itself. I'm pumped about Ricky.
So this is honestly the truest test of the kind of the process, Jax, yet. I mean, right? Because this is about as true as it gets, right? Because there's no way from a public perspective right now that I really should not be taking Keon Coleman, right? But if I'll kind of plant my flag a little bit here and say, look, I think from a value perspective, that's probably the guy. But I want to go here and take a guy who, look, I think Keon's got a chance to be good. He's got some special size, athleticism. I'm going to go with a guy that had production in college. He graded out very well for us. He ran very well at the combine. He is a smaller gentleman. But I will take Mr. Jacob Cowing.
Wow. There you go.
Oh,
that's pretty cool.
You're killing me, Wiz.
Hey, when you heard Kuvatakis say, I'm going to take the guy who at the Senior Bowl ran the best routes, I think that's when you thought he was taking Cowing.
Yeah, I did. When you said you were going back to the Senior Bowl, yeah, go ahead.
I'm taking Keon Coleman here. I probably would have taken him. I'm taking him over both those guys. I will say it's close though. I do appreciate Pearsall. I think Pearsall is going to get draft capital. Cowing, the only problem with Cowing is he might not get it. He might not get it. Now he also grades out very well. He's an interesting guy because I've been asking, all the college guys that we had on. I asked the same question every week. It was like, if we go back in time, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, Cowing was like a top 3 or 4, in his class prospect. Like he was like the guy. I remember, the Devy circles and everything. So for him to have that fall from grace and to basically end up being a fifth-year player is very interesting. So he has some potential upside. I think Keon Coleman, I hope he falls this far, and I hope I get some shares because he ran the 4.61, I think is what he ran, and a lot of people are going to think that's bad. I actually don't give a shit, pardon my French again, but I don't care at all about the 4.61. He's got fast game speed. He sort of showed that by running the gauntlet at one of the fastest, if not the fastest. In other words, he can play at a high rate of speed. He's, like you said, he's got some wow plays, both in catching the football and run after the catch. Yep. The metrics were not good, but that team may have been a little bit flawed. Who knows? He could be. Look, at this value, you can't go wrong.
No, I agree.
Agreed. In terms of Cowing, I tweeted today, if you liked Josh Downs, you're going to love Cowing. He is a faster version of him. He had a breakout in his freshman season, a true breakout in his freshman season. He's the rare freshman breakout that made it to year 5.
That is rare.
Yeah, but no, I'm comfortable with both of those picks. Well done. I'm going to get us back on track, guys, because again, there's no way any Superflex draft is not going to have another quarterback off the board by now. So I'm just going to go ahead and add the PE to the Knicks to my last quarterback taken.
There you go.
We're going to take Michael Penix Jr. Some may pronounce it Penix. I'll leave you to decide. And we'll see where he ends up. He probably ends up sitting a year, maybe Seattle. I don't know. That's what I'm hearing. And I still think that there's hope for Penix.
No, I mean, look, I agree with the Superflex perspective, right? I think you're kind of loading up right now at quarterback. So if you came away in this spot with this guy, even if it goes back to that conversation. Even if he doesn't necessarily fit your long-term plans, you're probably getting enough value here to make a move onto another guy and flip to another rookie if you wanted to, right? So I get that pick there.
He's going to get a shot.
Yeah.
It's so hard. Look at Wiz just having a hard time. It's so hard.
This is difficult, man.
It really
I'll tell you what,
is.
again, before the combine, there's literally no question. Like if this
Hero.
guy was here, just if he was here, that would have been it. You wouldn't have had to ask me anything.
Yeah, he's going. He was going probably RB3 or 2. You know, we would have taken him early second round pre combine, but he weighed nothing. He was under 200 pounds, ran nothing, no explosion. I mean, he just really failed at everything he could, and he took himself from being Jahmyr Gibbs light to being James White light, and that's not good.
No, I know. And look,
Your Honor, objection, leading the witness.
Well, look, James White, if you got James White right now in the third round of your rookie draft, not bad. So it's like at some point he does pose value, right? You know, if Theo Riddick and, you know, all these guys that are pass catching backs, that how much utility do they have in the NFL? Well, it depends on landing spot and all the rest of it. But, you know, if somehow he were to land where, you know, he's got a quarterback who likes to check it down, you know, we talked about Denver, you know, on the show where Denver led the league in running back targets. I mean, you know, there's spots where he could go where you're like, hey, I can see an opportunity for him here potentially. So who knows? But he definitely does not have bell cow upside any longer.
Yeah, I mean, I had a little Tajay Spears light dream for him, and Jax, we were talking earlier. I think that dream's kind of come and gone. I still like the player, I really do, and I'm probably rooting for Bucky almost more than anyone else after seeing how the public has kind of flipped on him. But look, this is, to me at this point, this is a preservation of kind of value, right? So, and this is not necessarily a player that I really believe in. He's coming off as the RB6 here. I do not have him as the RB6. I have concerns about him. But I think people really love his size. They love his age. He's coming into the league at 20 years old. I will go with Braylon Allen. And again, that's more of a preserve the value pick there.
Yeah, it's a good pick. And we're going to go rapid fire as we come to the end of the show. We'll go a little bit faster with the last few picks here. Braylon Allen, great pick. I'm going to go. There's a couple of wide receivers I think that still score well in our model as well as should get draft capital. You know, there's a couple that don't score well at all in our model that will get draft capital, and I don't know exactly how to parse that out. But I'm gonna take Jalen Polk, a kid with a chance.
Yeah,
I like the pick. Anytime you watch a Dunze tape, you can't help but notice Polk also being a baller out there.
Yep.
All right. I'm going to go back to the Senior Bowl. You can tell who the guys that I've been paying a lot of attention to.
This is a good pick. This was the other guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's got size, he's got speed, he breaks tackles. Yeah. Corners were holding him because they didn't know what else to do with him at the Senior Bowl repeatedly. He ran a 4.5, and at his size, that is just fine. And also his dad's the GOAT, so he might get a little coaching on the side. I'm going to take Brendan Rice and see how things play out.
Interesting pick there. I like that. All right.
Someone else.
I did too. I thought you were leading the. Yeah, I thought you were leading the witness to somebody else.
He's next on my board.
All right. I will go here. Let's. God, I'm gonna be that guy that has like 5 running backs at this point.
Yeah. There's another one. Yeah.
It's just the other guy that's gotten interesting to me recently. I'll say quickly is Will Shipley. That pass catching upside is definitely something that I've thought about. And at this point in the draft, you know what? At this point in the draft, I will take Will Shipley.
There you go. That's a good pick.
He's my 6 after the top 5 running backs who we've talked about, and I don't care about the order. Will Shipley is by default number 6 for me, just because I don't feel great about anything, and I feel best about the guy that can catch passes.
Yeah, agreed. Jax, you're up. Who you going?
I got to do it for the brand. Kamani Vidal.
Yes.
Give me Kamani Vidal.
Ooh, I love it.
I have to do it. There's only a few more picks. I can't get through here without taking Kamani. So I'll take Kamani Vidal. the kid out of Troy. He's a great running back. It's whether or not he gets draft capital. We'll see. Look, if he gets 4th or 5th round, this pick looks like a brilliant pick. If he gets 7th or undrafted, it looks like a sucker bet. And that's really going to be the difference for him. But we certainly know he has talent. He grades really, really well in almost every metric. So, let's go, baby.
Yeah, that 4.47 changed everything for me in terms of Kamani. I knew he could catch passes. I knew he could, looks like he can pass block. That 4.47 and that speed score made him very viable very quickly. All right. Well, boy, I'm beating a dead horse here. I'm going back to the Senior Bowl, and I'm going to take the guy you guys thought I was going to take last time around. His 5th-year breakout is absolutely terrifying. Yeah. Everything about his profile says do not draft and stay away. But here's the thing. What most people don't know is that this guy played high school. He played quarterback in high school. He didn't start playing wide receiver until he got to college, so it took him a little while to develop. There was other complaints at the Senior Bowl that, he was listed at 6'3", 227. He showed up at 6'1", 223. People wanted DK Metcalf, and they were upset that he looked like A.J. Brown. Last time I checked, we like A.J. Brown. We want A.J. Brown. So I'm going to go ahead and roll the dice on Xavier Legette, my second Xavier of the night. I feel real good about his athleticism. He had a bad day one at the Senior Bowl, but really turned it on after that. And, at this point in the draft, I'm willing to bet on raw athleticism and a shakier profile for upside.
I mean, you drafted more of the letter X than anybody could have ever. You've got Nix, Penix, Xavier, and Xavier. I mean, you got X's all over the place.
Yeah.
The X team.
No, I mean, look, I will say he's not a guy that I'm particularly targeting, but man, he is a grown man, that guy.
Yes, sir.
All right, I'm not going to let my guy Buck fall anymore. I'm going to go ahead and take the plunge on Bucky Irving.
Shit.
You're welcome.
Oh my God. I know. And here's the thing. This is going to be very interesting because here we are at the end of a 3rd round, and there are still a lot of players that I like and would like to press the button on. I know a lot of them will be nobodies in the NFL. That's just the math. But I think there's a lot of exciting prospects deep into this draft. I mean, maybe we'll have a quick, conversation about some of the ones that we're close on. But I am going to draft Malachi Corley. I thought that was actually who you were going to be taking a couple picks ago. I think Corley is an interesting prospect. He plays super close to the line of scrimmage, but I think he's actually the better version of Xavier Legette. A guy that they can, Curtis Samuel type of player, who can take the ball out of the backfield and do lots of different types of things, jet sweeps. Who knows? He may get just special teams love, and that may be all he is in the NFL. But one way or the other, I think he's making the team. So Malachi Corley.
Yeah, and the thing about that special teams play is that'll make him active on game day, and that is going to grant him real NFL opportunities at snaps from scrimmage just by virtue of the fact that he'll be active on game day. So I don't hate it here. I hated him in the 2nd round and where he was projected earlier in the offseason, but in the 3rd round, I mean, like I said earlier, go upside. And on that note, I'm going to go upside here. I'm going to take tight end 2 on my board.
Good.
Stay on brand and go with another.
How did I? Dude, I have Ben Sano way up there, way above all these players, and I totally forgot to take him.
Well, you can talk about him next because that's not who I'm taking. I'm taking the most athletic tight end of all time since 1987 of all tight ends that I've ever tested.
Theo.
Yes. His college production was lacking at Penn State, but it was good enough. Over 10 touchdowns, 400 yards a season, and by the way, a 10 RAS score. I'm taking Theo Johnson. He's ready to go right now as a tight end in the NFL, and if he takes a year or two to develop, I'm okay with that because athleticism is all that matters at this position. He's 6'6", 254, and runs a 4.5 something.
Yeah. No, he was an athletic specimen. I can't believe I did that. Like literally, I think I would have taken Ben Sinnott like early third based off of my board. I just somehow passed him by as I'm looking at my board. So unbelievable.
I was pretty convinced that you were taking him there. For what it's worth, it was between Ben and Bucky for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Real quick, it was a 129 speed score, a 124 burst score for Theo Johnson at 6'6", 259 pounds, a 4.57 40. It's just absurd for a man that large to be running that fast and jumping that high.
So let's get to some of our omissions. Obviously, Ben Sinnott, or however the hell you say his name, is certainly one of them for me.
He looks good.
Isaiah Davis, running back, also out of South Dakota. I liked him. And Devontae Walker, I think, is another upside play, especially late, at this part of the draft. Those are three. I also, you talked about quarterbacks. I think Spencer Rattler is someone that has to be discussed. And look, he could get second-round draft capital. I don't know exactly where he's going to go, but Spencer Rattler's another one. Who else you guys like that we might have omitted?
I think the Spencer Rattler is a great call because I do think that he's going to get some draft capital, and he just could be a nice guy to stash. He's got a ton of experience in college. I think one of the guys that I think about is Jamari Thrash. He's a wide receiver that I like quite a bit. I know some of his production was at Georgia State, but he still had a nice year once he transferred to Louisville. The other guy that I like and he's going to be almost next to free, which is kind of why I like him. But Luke McCaffrey, I do think is interesting. Yeah. He went to Rice, but he graded out pretty well for us. He put together a nice combine there. The other thing that I like too is he was a quarterback. So those guys tend to pick up the offense a little bit quicker. So he's probably one of those other late guys that I like. What about you, Joe?
Well, you guys took all my answers, but I'm going to echo Luke McCaffrey and just go with that pedigree. I'm very, very interested. He converted to wide receiver in his senior season from quarterback and looked very natural. I wonder why. And then another one, this is a deeper one, but I really like what I've seen so far from Ryan Flournoy from Southeast Missouri. He's someone you're going to be able to get in the 5th round, but I'm going to be pushing the button on him pretty often because he showed up at the Senior Bowl and he was able to hang. That's guys like him are what the Senior Bowl is made for, right? Just, sure. All-stars that may have gone unnoticed. And then did Will Shipley get drafted?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I took him.
All right.
Audric Estime and Johnny Wilson and Franklin Jr., Ray Davis. There's a lot of good players that.
Yeah. I have a thing about 24-year-old running backs. I push them down the board. But there are definitely a few.
I saw your article. It's great, by the way.
At the top of the 4th, though, if I'm going to take one of the 24-year-olds, it'd probably be Isaac Guerrero, speed score, burst score freak.
Yeah. Yep.
Who knows where he ends up? But there's a lot of guys I'm still interested in. I think the moral of the story here is get 3rd-round picks for cheap because there are still a lot of guys that we're going to be interested in. It's one of the deepest classes I've ever seen.
Yeah, for sure. And on that, we're signing out. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to follow us at the Undroppables. I'm at Dino Game Theory. At DeWiz.
I'm at. Yep.
Go for it.
Dynasty_Joe FF.
DAWAWIZ_FFB. So.
The Wiz. Later, guys.
AKA Wizmo.
All right, guys. Thanks, guys.
Peace.